KCRW sponsors include A24, presenting Moonlight, a film chronicling 3 chapters in the life of a young black man discovering his identity and experiencing first love as he moves from childhood into manhood. In theaters now.
On To The Point, we try to make sense of the policy debates and the political sideshows on the campaign trail.
Neither party's agenda really aligns with who its coalition is today.
It was the dumbest speech I have ever seen in my life of covering politics.
When people walk into a voting booth, at the end of the day, they do say, I really should vote for someone smarter than me.
I'm Warren Olney. To The Point has you covered for the 2016 campaign. Find the To The Point podcast on KCRW's iTunes page.
From KCRW Santa Monica and KCRW.com, it's The Treatment. Welcome to The Treatment. The gentleman coughing across from me has worked with directors from Derek Sheehan France to, oh my God, to David Mackenzie. We had Jack O'Connell here last year. He was just here for that. And he is sitting across from me. Of course, he's Ben Mendelsohn. He had a great year at Sundance this year. I saw him in 2 films there, Slow West and, of course, Mississippi Grind, for which he's nominated for Best Male Lead for the Independent Spirit Award. He's also on Netflix and Bloodline. Ben, thanks so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
And one of the things that I say I really like about you as an actor, and people talk about your accents, but what I really like is that you characters always have this really conspiratorial way of talking.
Oh.
I think that's really interesting that they really sort of like bring their voice down, like the way Jerry brings his voice down, especially when he's really serious. The voice comes down. And I kind of wonder where that comes from for you.
I think that may be an Australian tick.
Yeah.
It may be that thing. There's a lot of, you may not think it if you've just been exposed to, Australians through media, but they are we're very reticent to share sort of or display, uncomfortable emotional stuff. So we will tend to, if there's something important to say and that's something that's difficult, we will quite quickly go down to this kind of thing. So I think it's probably a crossover there.
I think it's interesting. The characters you play, the more flawed they are, the quieter they tend to be.
Which is good because hopefully I would love to get to the point of doing a silent film.
Please don't.
And that guy would have to be pretty bad, though, wouldn't he? I think on the spectrum.
Please don't do that yet. We have another 27 minutes to fill here. But I just wonder if that was a thing you got from, because as a younger actor, you were a bit louder and a bit more boisterous. And I just noticed that the voice has been dialed down, especially in the past 5 years or so.
Well, and I think there is a technical reason for this as well, and that is that the way we record now on set is much more intimate. You are much more likely to have better sound recording equipment. You're much more likely to wear a microphone, whereas back in the day it was all boom. And
so the day my voice broke, it was like all boom and everything.
Yep, that was all boom. There was no radio mics really at that stage. Not that we used. I mean, I'm pretty sure about that. I can remember there was a Robert Altman film that was famous for its use of radio mics in its large crowd scenes, and that was quite remarkable. And I can remember sound recorders talking to me about that.
Well, Altman was the guy who really did that stuff. Started with Nashville, just making sure that everybody had a mic, so you could get that kind of crowd sound. That thing he liked, where it wasn't one actor stopping and then the next actor picking up. He liked the idea of as much live sound as possible. And
that really comes through in his stuff, but that's not how it was for us back in the day. So it may be that. It may be... Yeah, those are my 2 best guesses on it.
Okay, well, you're doing it, so all I can do is ask the questions.
Yeah, I've never had it before, so it's there you go. My brain has to start immediately.
Have a bite to eat. Just relax for a moment. Yes. But I think, too, that makes it interesting for me because these guys, it's also, you find a way to sort of vary the speaking rhythms of these guys. Thinking about your character on Bloodline, who has a very different rhythm from Jerry in Mississippi Grind, or even in Slow West, and that coat that seems to be made out of Ewoks that you were wearing.
Oh, that coat is amazing. I have that coat.
You have that coat?
Yeah, that coat is so remarkable. For those of you that haven't seen it, it is a large
What kind of animal skin was that?
I'm going to guess it's just like sheepskin or something like that. It's the equivalent of a trapper's coat from back in the day. Back in the 1800s, there are pictures of these trappers.
And we should say Slow West is a revisionist Western directed by John McClane.
Indeed. And these trappers from up north in the States would have these enormous fur coats that were, I don't know what animals. I guess it was bears and beavers and whatever else. But
probably bison, whatever they got out there at the time. They would just make coats out of it.
Yeah. So they did one of those. And as soon as I saw it, I was ecstatic. It was an unbelievably good bit of work. And they weren't sure whether or not I was going to go for it, whether it was going to be acceptable, which seems ridiculous when you see it, but...
Especially also given the size of the character, too. He needs something to announce him.
That's sort of it. I mean, if you go... I mean, he had very much... John McClane had very much McCabe and Mrs. Miller in mind.
And that's almost like a McCabe coat.
It completely is. And he liked the villain in that, who is a British guy who's an extraordinary performance, and I don't know the actor's name, but... that was where he wanted to pitch it. He didn't want it to be hissing and fangs. He wanted it to be quite a self-composed, but with a significant amount of force behind it, which that guy in McCabe and Mrs. Miller has par excellence. Now, I didn't get to his great heights, but I had the coat. And the coat did a lot of work.
It's interesting, too, because I can even see the way that coat changed your bearing in terms of performance. You have to stand upright in that coat, don't you?
Have to. Yeah, you can't go slouching in a coat like that because you'll fall over.
We're talking ownership with my guest, Ben Mendelsohn, who Emmy nominee for Bloodline, and is also can be seen in Mississippi Grind. I think, too, though, because even with the character as big as that character, again, you didn't try to make the voice, you didn't try to, as you was talking about, no hissing or fangs or anything. That sort of self-possession lent itself to this really almost saturnine self-confidence. Really quiet.
Yeah, I think. Look, a lot of the people I enjoyed watching, you sometimes had to lean in to try and get what they were saying.
Like who are you thinking? For example?
De Niro's my sort of teenage pin-up. And, a lot of his stuff was very, and I'm talking about the classic late 70s to early 80s period. A lot of it you had to feel like you had to lean in to
if you think about his young Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2, he never raises that voice.
That one, although that one is not the one that really ever sort of lit my flame. It was really Travis that, put me over the edge.
Taxi driver, Travis Bickle, yeah, sure.
And there was always just a feeling that you had to try and catch what was going on. I guess there's that, I've tried to emulate that sort of stuff. But I don't know what it is,
Because let's talk about Mississippi Grind, because, again, there's a lot of concentration there, and he's actually living all these moments as if he's trying to make up for what he's lost.
Yeah. Jerry is a pretty hopeless gambling addict. I mean, I think one of the first things that I had to think about with the gambling stuff was that actually kind of the point of it is actually to lose. It's kind of like the point of a gambling addiction is actually an attempt to control how much you're losing. But it's really about the losing more than the winning. I think that kind of immediacy that you get in gambling, where it really is about the next card, the next roll of the dice, whatever it is, it's a very immediate sort of a space. So he's very, you might say it in a hippie sort of a way, as in the moment.
Yeah, because it's very much that, because also he's at this point where at least he's telling himself that he's lost about everything, so he's got to try to steady his life. He's got to try to bring some balance into it, and there's almost this kind of constant inner dialogue that's going on with him, except he sort of says some of these things out loud. Yeah,
he says quite a lot of those things out loud. I only know so much of any of these sort of characters in a way.
How do you mean?
I feel like there are... You can have a feeling about people and the characters you play and stuff like that, but in actual fact, you can only really know or get a sense of a certain bit, and they end up being more and different than the way you might think of them and the way you conceive them or even the way you try and play them. I only do that bit, and I don't think about a lot of these things. You were talking about the way they talk and, their vocal rhythms. I don't really think about any of that stuff.
Then what's your preparation? What are you doing for Jerry, for example?
I read it. I try and read it like once or twice. I don't read it that much. In the case of Jerry, he's a poker player, so I got very lucky to be given this poker pro down in New Orleans by the name of Anthony Howard, and we rolled along and played a lot of poker. We went to the Harrah's Casino down there in New Orleans, and that's a pretty good poker room. And, I played, and I did well for a while, and then they ate me up. They got me, and they got me good.
Did they bait the hook a little bit to let you think
No, not necessarily, because I think there was a feeling they have their own landscape very much, those guys, and they enjoy each other. They tend to like each other, but if they have a rivalry, boy, they want to get the other guy. They really, really want to get the other guy. And it's very hierarchical. So, Anthony was a pretty well-liked guy. He's a very charming guy, incredibly charming guy. And he knew what he was doing. So I kind of just got to be the wingman dude. And, after a while, when they twigged to what was going on and that sort of stuff, they might have, asked how the film was going or whatever, and then, take me for, another few $100.
It's funny that you're saying this, because I was thinking about how Jerry is a different guy when he's around other people.
Yeah.
There's something about him that kind of comes to life a little bit. And that idea of that competitive atmosphere you're talking about, but also being social. He really, when he's on his own, he's trying to talk himself into things and kind of laying out, almost like an addict would, these sort of things, these things he needs to do, this agenda he needs to set for himself, which goes out the window once he's around other people.
Yeah, very much. I think that, if you like the anxieties, if you like, of being in a social situation or whatnot, I feel like Jerry would walk away from a lot of social exchanges, going do, do, do. So he does spend a lot of time attempting to master that environment. It's sort of like the guy who wants to date a girl, and, he'd be the kind of guy that would, send away for Spanish fly or something like that, Any kind of mastery or anything, I think, where he could put himself in a position where he didn't feel like he was at the mercy of the situation, I think he attempts to do.
And also, too, when he's, because there's that great chemistry you have with Ryan Reynolds in the film, and he just completely kind of looks up to him. This guy he wants to be.
Yeah, well, that film doesn't get made without Ryan, firstly. Secondly, you ever actually get to be in the same room as Ryan Reynolds, you do kind of want to be like him. It's a pretty easy thing, He's a great-looking guy. He's got great presence. But the most impressive thing about Ryan is just how good it feels to be around him. He is just a great guy. And in terms of acting, his timing is peerless. His timing, which I think people would get from comedy and stuff like that, is a killer. It's a killer attribute for drama, because he's got such a great ear that he will always give you. He'll see where you're climbing in a scene, and he'll sort of lay out the next pipe for you to grab up there and reach over there. So it always felt very, very easy to do these scenes with him. It felt incredibly easy.
We're going to take a break and give my guest Ben Mendelsohn a chance to chew and do some swallowing against the treatment. There's more to come. Stay with us.
Are you thinking about buying a new car? Consider donating your old one to KCRW and support the unique mix of news, music, and culture you love. You'll become a KCRW member and get a nice tax write-off. For details, visit kcrw.com/cars.
Welcome back. The mastication you're hearing across from me is coming from my guest, Ben Mendelsohn, who, of course, is starring in Bloodline on Netflix and can be seen in many places in Mississippi Grind, for which he's nominated for a Spirit Award for Best Male Lead this year. As you were talking about this, though, I was thinking about how there's so many scenes you have where there are these moments that are deeply uncomfortable, and even thinking about your relationship, Danny's relationship with Kyle Chandler, where there's also that kind of thing, too, where there's kind of this ideal of something, and he sort of sees his kind of his own lack of self-worth comes up. And it's interesting watching you play these things out, going from that character in Slow West, who was really this mountain of self-confidence, and knew exactly who and what he was, and walked into a situation basically reading it. I mean, almost like a poker player that way, reading everybody else around him, to somebody who had to be so sort of these other guys who were so kind of painfully nervous and anxious around people, and that I wonder if it's one is easier to play than the other.
I think it has a great deal to do with the two actors, I think, being willing, or the two or more actors, to be willing to go to the places that they need or might go to. And it's very easy to block that. I think it's a very easy thing to hit a kill switch in an acting scenario, or for someone or something to kill that vibe. I think, like an idea or inspiration, it's a very delicate flame. But if you provide the right fuel around it, you can build a really great fire, but it's very easy to blow it out. So in fact, all of those actors are incredibly good at playing with you. You know, they are great at it. And I think that's probably the more telling thing.
Because as you're talking about this, I'm thinking you were saying in the first half about how you look at the script only really a couple of times. It's like you're really trying to make sure that you're going to give that flame enough room by not really overthinking it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of my conclusions are, I don't want to get too married to them in most of those senses, because I think you actually find out more through just listening and feeling your way into things than I do by thinking, reading all the notes and going, no, this is an A here. Well, you know, maybe it is, but maybe it also sounds good as an E or a A sharp. So I think that a lot of that, I never want to get to a set and feel like, no, hold on, this isn't how this scene is. This scene is not this. And I think when you really plan it down to an nth degree, you run into the unfortunate situation of meeting the other humans there. And I think that's what I try and make sure that there's enough room for.
Because you do want to be in a situation where you haven't worked out so much that there's nothing left to give, right? I mean, you don't want to have it all done before you step on the set.
I think it also, there's a certain stiffness and a certain... You want your feelings to happen while the film is going through the camera, if you like, not to have happened, 2 or 3 nights before while you were figuring out what it is you're going to do. And I think the discovering that stuff is pretty good when it all hits correctly. It can be a bit of a high wire act. I think there are
it sounds incredibly sort of delicate, and you really have to be balanced in that way. You would have to be on a high wire.
Yeah, and I do think sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's very frustrating. But I think that...
But you're really attuned to that too when it doesn't work. You can probably feel it as you're shooting it, can't you?
You can feel it, and it's look, I think there was a great sculptor, and I think I'm quoting Giacometti here, who was a wonderful sculptor. And someone said, listen, you've been doing these works for so many years and working at this great level. How do you do it? And he said, by going from one failure to the next, meaning that when you conceive of the thing, you have a perfection idea of it. You get in there and you work with the material, and it is never what you think it should be exactly. It's always different. And being able to work with that, the non-perfection of it, if you like, and then go, okay, we did that scene. I didn't thought I should be here or get this or get that. Never mind, we've got another scene. Let's try it there. So it's just that sort of thing of just getting up and trying it again, letting the last one go by and trying for the next one.
It's a treatment, my guess, who the first person in the 20 years of doing the show to quote Giacometti would be.
And it may well be. I may well have got that wrong, you know.
Hey, I'm not here to correct anybody. Nobody listens to the show for that. My guest is Ben Mendelsohn. We're talking about any number of things, but he's done a bunch of great stuff. I was thinking, though, as we were talking about this, how that sort of interesting combination is sort of like lackadaisical and intensity that you brought to The Place Beyond the Pines. I mean, that guy is really a really interesting guy to me.
Oh, look, that was a real treat. I think that was a huge breakthrough. He was written as a sort of a neo-Nazi kind of
So a much harder guy?
jailbird, yeah, very much. You know, very, very much a puppeteering Ryan's character to go and rob these banks and stuff like that. And we both got there, Ryan Gosling, myself, and we shot our first day or so, and it was kind of like we were both trying to be the hardest men on earth to each other. And it wasn't, we had a bad first day. And now, some point around, or it could have even been before then, Derek had said, I don't like this situation that I've written. It's not feeling. And so he sort of threw it on its head. He said, look, what about if you just meet this guy and you like him? Maybe you even love him. Maybe you're in love with him. Would you be all right with playing that? I said, what do you think? Of course, you know. So he flipped the situation on its head, and the scenes stayed essentially the same. All the scenes essentially stayed.
You just changed the intent.
They just completely got flipped from the idea of someone that was puppeteering someone to the idea of someone that was sort of just trying to, you know, be closer and sort of involve him in something good and, you know.
This is what I was talking about at the outset, that conspiratorial thing, where it's that sort of thing where you can't like be big, and because then suddenly it's like two guys bumping chests with each other, trying to see who's a bigger guy, who's more of the alpha dog.
Yeah,
and so many of these things. I was thinking even in Killing Them Softly, he's that kind of guy too, where it's always about, well, what is he saying? and that's really interesting because what that does too is you can see it changes the way the other actor is listening in the shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you like that, don't you?
Oh, look, I do. I think that I love watching things when I can, I can feel it. If I'm watching something and I get taken away by the feelings that are going on the screen, that's where I want to be. That's what I love as an audience member. And it seems to me, my best thinking on it at the moment is that as humans we have these incredible mirroring parts of our brain where we can understand what's going on with the other human by looking at them. We can get a sense of how they feel and this and that and the other. And when you're acting well, an audience will pick up on all these bits of information about you that are not necessarily to do with the next line or everything else. And that is hopefully immersive. That hopefully is something that's fun as an audience to watch.
Because I guess I was thinking, you're talking about music, and it becomes contrapuntal, where the bigger the character, the more you bring it down.
Yeah. I saw, I had a chance one time to do this masterclass with this Georgian, as in Russian, Georgian, Shakespearean actor. Mm-hmm. And he came in and he played King Lear in a couple of different ways. And the way that was really like made me go, whoa, was he came in and he was very happy, and then he sat down and then he was very quiet. But when he was quiet, it was terrifying. I mean, and there was a mood change that happened in there from him being bon vivant and this and that. But it was the fact that he could be quiet and he was the king and you listened to him. You know, you listened, you paid attention. And that was very affecting.
Because I got to think, just being a fan of yours for so long, and so much of this is about trying to find ways to shade intimacy, because it's not the same. I'm not trying to make it sound like you're doing the same thing all the time, because you're not. But this way of sort of like bringing this quieter tone, so that it's almost like you're inviting somebody into your world as these characters. It's not just like you're sort of claiming a space, but rather saying, come in, because I want you to be part of this. And as you were talking about that character from Place Beyond the Pines, it was that, no, you're my friend. So if we do this thing together, then we're friends again. I love you. I want you to be in this thing with me. I'm not trying to make you do it. I want you to want what I want. And a lot of it becomes that kind of thing too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. But I got to tell you, you are the first person, and I've been at this for a long time, to talk to me about this stuff. And I haven't thought about it a lot.
I would swear that it was like you're just going from that earlier part of your career, where as you're younger, you're just trying to figure out who you are as you're figuring out who you are on screen. Yeah. But getting more of a sense of being an actor just from doing it, you figure out ways to make it more interesting to yourself, don't you?
I think so. I mean, look, I do think that that there are. I think they say there are 36 basic stories in drama and in human life. There are basically 36 of them, and we mix them up, we flip them around, and we change what the characters look like, etc., etc. But there are only so many stories, and we all know the stories, and we tell them to ourselves again and again, and they provide an enormous amount of things to us. They provide comfort, inspiration, connectedness, purpose, all sorts of things. As an actor, you do want to keep it interesting for yourself, because I think it's like the old saying, you can be anything at all, but don't be boring. You can be over the top, you can be this, you can be that, you can be anything except for boring. That is the one thing that you mustn't be in performance art, in acting, basically.
And is that part of it too? Can you feel like when you're going off course and if it's not interesting to you, then it's not going to be interesting in front of the camera?
Not necessarily. I think what I have learned is that my barometer for the broader picture is pretty crappy. It's not a good barometer at all.
Really?
Yeah.
You're just talking about feeling that it didn't work out in that scene in Place Beyond the Pines. So obviously that needle has to work on some level.
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's the up close and personal stuff, and I will feel to a greater or lesser degree that something is or isn't happening, but But outside of that, if I think a project on the whole is going really well or really poorly or this or that stuff I don't have any clue about. And that stuff I get wrong all the time. And I'm glad I get it wrong. Well, my dial is set to pessimism.
Really?
Yeah, because I think pessimism is a win-win situation. You're going to try harder. If things don't go so well, you kind of half expected that anyway. And if they do go well, then you get pleasantly surprised. And but the most important thing about being a pessimist is it means that you put more effort in. I think pessimism equals effort. I think if you're greatly optimistic about everything, you may not try as hard. If you're a little bit pessimistic, then you should rise to meet the situation a bit more.
That would explain why I'm here. Ben, we're out of time. I can't thank you. Please come back. I can't thank you enough for doing this.
It's been a great pleasure. I look forward to it.
My pleasure. My guest is Ben Mendelsohn. He is starring with Ryan Reynolds in Mississippi Grind, for which he got, I have to say this again, a Spirit Award nomination for Best Male Lead. He's also in the show Bloodline on Netflix. Our recording engineer, who also mixes the show, is Kat Yor. It's edited by Blake White, who's the associate producer. I'm not an optimist at all. It's the treatment. To catch up on past episodes of The Treatment, go to KCRW.com or listen on your smartphone with KCRW's mobile apps, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Treatment is produced and distributed by KCRW Santa Monica.